Why rich parents teach their children to lose small before winning big. Let me tell you something that sounds insane at first. Wealthy parents don't protect their children from failure. They design it. Not catastrophic failure, not reckless loss, small controlled losses, on purpose. Because here's the brutal truth. If you've never learned how to lose small, you will eventually lose big. And when that big loss hits, financially, emotionally, strategically, most people collapse. Rich families don't raise collapse-prone decision-makers. They raise calibrated risk-takers. And that difference, it creates generational leverage. Let's break this down. 1. The dangerous myth of protecting children. Most parents think protection equals love. Shield them from disappointment. Shield them from embarrassment. Shield them from financial mistakes. But here's the problem. Unexposed nervous systems panic under real pressure. If a child never experiences controlled loss, their first real loss feels existential. And existential fear triggers catastrophic decisions. Rich parents understand something counterintuitive. You don't remove failure. You regulate its size. 2. Controlled exposure to failure. In wealthy households, children are allowed to fail, within boundaries. Small investment gone wrong? Lesson. Business project that flops? Debrief? Competitive loss? Analysis. Notice the pattern. Failure is framed as feedback, not identity, and it's intentionally kept small. Because the earlier you normalize loss, the less emotional damage it causes later. This is psychological conditioning, not punishment. 3. Why small losses build big advantage. Think about investing. If you've never seen a portfolio dip 15%, the first drop feels like disaster. You sell, you lock in losses, you swear off risk. But if you've experienced volatility before, in small doses, your nervous system stays calm. Calm people make better decisions. Better decisions compound. Rich parents expose their children to volatility early. Low-stakes environments, controlled risk, safety briefing. They train response, not avoidance. 4. Risk calibration. Here's the word most people never learn. Calibration. Calibration means understanding risk proportionally, not emotionally. You don't label every setback as catastrophic. You measure it relative to total capacity. Wealthy parents teach children to ask, how big is this loss relative to the whole? That question alone prevents panic, because perspective neutralizes drama, and drama destroys capital. 5. Why impatience causes massive loss. If you've never lost small, you overreact to medium losses. And overreaction creates large losses. Selling at the bottom, quitting industries too early, abandoning promising ventures during slow phases. Most wealth destruction isn't from bad opportunity, it's from emotional miscalibration. Rich families reduce emotional volatility early. They build emotional shock absorbers. 6. Emotional detachment from outcomes. Here's where it gets strategic. Wealthy parents don't tie identity to results. They separate effort from outcome. You executed well, and the result didn't land. That subtle distinction matters, because if identity fuses with outcome, risk becomes terrifying, and terrified people avoid opportunity. Detached people evaluate opportunity. Detachment increases participation. Participation increases upside. 7. Business training early. Some wealthy families give their children small capital pools to manage, not huge amounts. Small amounts, enough to feel real, not enough to cause damage. They let them make mistakes, lose money, misjudge timing. Then they review. No shame, just data. This creates risk literacy. Most adults lack risk literacy. Because they were never trained in safe environments. 8. Why your advisor never talks about this. Why does your CPA emphasize tax savings but not emotional calibration? Because emotional mistakes don't show up in spreadsheets. Why does financial media focus on gains but rarely teach controlled loss? Because pain doesn't sell optimism. Why are you taught to avoid failure at all costs? Because institutions optimize for predictability, not resilience. But resilience builds wealth. Predictability protects mediocrity. 9. The asymmetric mindset. Here's a principle wealthy families internalize. Limit downside. Expand upside. That's asymmetric thinking. You risk small amounts to potentially gain large ones, but you never risk everything. Children trained with small losses understand asymmetry intuitively. They don't bet the house. They test, measure, adjust. That's how professionals operate. 10. School is a risk lab. In disciplined households, school isn't just grades. It's controlled exposure. Try for leadership. Compete publicly. Present ideas. If they stumble, debrief. What worked? What didn't? No drama. Failure becomes information. Information becomes adjustment. Adjustment becomes advantage. 11. The psychology of loss. Loss activates fear centers in the brain. Untrained individuals freeze or flee. Trained individuals evaluate. If you experience small losses repeatedly, your brain learns, I survived this. Survival builds confidence. Confidence enables larger calculated risks later, which is where big wins live. 12. Why big winners lose often. Look at venture capital. Most investments fail. A few return 10 times. Professionals expect losses. They don't panic. They calibrate. Wealthy families apply similar logic to life. They understand that losing small is tuition. And tuition buys experience. Experience compounds. 13. The dangerous alternative. Here's the risk of overprotection. A child shielded from failure grows up believing, loss means I'm inadequate. So they avoid risk. They choose safe paths. They prioritize certainty over opportunity. Certainty rarely builds wealth. Calculated exposure does. 14. Small losses. Build decision confidence. Confidence doesn't come from winning every time. It comes from surviving losses. When you've lost and recovered, your fear threshold decreases. You take bigger swings responsibly. Wealth isn't built on hesitation. It's built on calibrated boldness. 15. Social media distortion. You see highlight reels, big wins, massive exits, rapid growth. You don't see the dozens of small failures that preceded them. Wealthy parents make sure their children understand the hidden side. They normalize loss privately, so public wins don't distort reality. 16. Installing this principle. You don't need generational wealth to apply this. Start small. Risk controlled amounts of capital. Take manageable professional risks. Enter competitive environments deliberately. When loss happens, measure it. Analyze it. Adjust. Never personalize it. Loss is data, not destiny. 17. The identity shift. When you learn to lose small, you stop fearing loss entirely. You start respecting it. Respect creates discipline. Discipline protects capital. Protected capital compounds, and compounding creates freedom. 18. Final frame. Wealthy parents teach their children to lose small before winning big because small losses build resilience. Resilience builds risk literacy. Risk literacy builds asymmetric thinking. Asymmetric thinking builds wealth. If you can't handle losing 5% calmly, you'll never hold through 50% growth cycles. If you can't detach from small setbacks, you'll sabotage large opportunities. So ask yourself, are you avoiding small failures? or training through them, because big wins belong to those who survived small losses without losing control. Lose small, learn fast, win big. That's the rule, and it compounds for life.